Hello everyone, I'm Nitin Menon, Executive Director, Fortune IAS Academy. Just like previous year, this year also, Fortune is bringing a series of videos analyzing the GS answers of our toppers. In this session, we'll be analyzing Fabi Rasheed's answer. Fabi Rasheed, one of our students, has secured rank 71 in UPSC exam 2023-24. Thank you, Fabi, for joining us. In the first part of the session, I'll show you some answers that Fabi had written in the beginning of our test series. Now, the primary goal of going through these answers is to learn from her mistakes. I'll show some answers where there are probably mistakes with the structure, or she might not have addressed the question adequately. Okay, so let's start with GS1. This is a question from Fortune's first main test series question paper. So, Raja Ram Mohan Roy is known as father of modern India. Evaluate the efforts taken by Raja Ram Mohan Roy in changing the social landscape of India during the early 19th century. Now, if you can notice, I have marked evaluate in red. This is primarily because, let's go through her answer. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was a social reformer of 19th century. He has undertaken the following efforts: abolition of sati, promotion of education, some other points, and it just goes on and on. She has spoken about his contributions, and you can notice that at the end of the answer, in red I've written limitation. Now I'll take you to the question again. The question is, evaluate the efforts taken by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Now, the first thing that I want you to understand is when they ask you to evaluate something, it might be the contribution of a personality, a scheme, a legislation, a policy. You need to look at the positive effort, positive contribution of a scheme, personality, but also delve upon some limitation. This is what she had missed out in this question. And please understand, evaluate word might come in GS1, GS2, GS3. Try to make sure that you're evaluating it. If it's a legislation, the positive impact, what changes it has brought about, and also because it's evaluated, there might be some deficiency, there might be some flaw which still persists. That also should be focused on. In this answer, Fabi has primarily focused on the contributions alone, and she has written a good answer when it comes to contributions. But say his reach was not going beyond the urban areas of Bengal. Such points were not mentioned in this answer. Now let's come to a GS3 question. The IPCC's 6th assessment report has warned of multiple climate change induced disasters in the next 2 decades, particularly in countries like India. In this context, discuss various disaster preparedness strategies that need to be adopted with respect to protection of India's coastal areas. Now the question is primarily about India's coastal areas. Okay. Her answer is good. Her answer is actually really good for this question. But the reason why I want to discuss this question is she has a diagram. She has spoken about strategies to protect the coastal areas. All those things are good. But one thing which I felt was missing was a map which could probably showcase the different types of disasters and the problems that the coastal regions of India is facing. And during the feedback, I had mentioned that to her, and see, you can see map of various things that she has mentioned on her answer paper. So this value addition through maps is something that you can use for any disaster related questions. It can be about landslides, it can be about earthquakes, it can be about storms, it can be about cyclones. That is the only thing that is missing in this question. Okay, now we look at a question from GS3, disaster management. The question is, highlight the vulnerability of Indian cities to environmental risks and hazards. Now, the question is highlight the vulnerability. Good. Now, what Fabi has done is she has elaborated upon the different types of hazards, natural, anthropogenic. She has spoken about, she has drawn a good map to speak about the different the vulnerabilities of the regions that there are in India. Now, I have to tell you that this map was initially missing from her answer earlier on. There was a similar question earlier on regarding vulnerability of coastal areas, which we have already discussed. In that, map was missing. So she has incorporated that aspect of map in her answer. But one thing that she has not still addressed is, she has spoken about the vulnerabilities, but no solution has been given. Yes, the question does not explicitly ask the solutions with regards to, or what should be done to reduce the vulnerability. But please understand, for your answer to be wholesome, if you're talking about a problem, in this question, you're talking about the vulnerability of Indian cities to XYZ problems or XYZ disaster or whatever may be the case. But make sure that in the second page, or if it's a 15 marker, in the third page, at least 25% of that page you are focusing or contributing to the solutions or way forward. That is one part which is missed out. I'll take you back to the question. The question says highlight the vulnerability. So there is an implicit part in the question itself where you have to speak about the way forward at the end of the answer. I hope that's clear. Now, this is a question that we had put in our economic geography question paper. I'll just read the question. Marine resources present the last resource frontier for mankind. Careful management and planning of these resources will ensure a sustainable global development. Comment on the above statement with respect to the deep ocean mission. Now, this is a common theme that UPSC follows. There is a rhetorical statement, and after the rhetorical statement will be a very long sentence, and after that statement or sentence, there will be a question. All right. They may or may not say comment on the above statement, but I think you should still try to shed some light on the sentence which UPSC has given before the real question. In this case, marine resources present the last resource frontier for mankind. Careful management and planning of these resources will ensure a sustainable global development. I'll tell you what Fabi had done in this question. She spoke about marine resources, a paragraph, an introduction, and straight away she went to main objectives of India's deep ocean mission. You would notice that the question says marine resources present last resource frontier for mankind. Careful management and planning of these resources will ensure sustainable development. And after that alone, it says comment on the above statement with respect to deep ocean mission. So there's a chunk of the question that she has not addressed. How marine, so if I can pose new questions, marine resources present last frontier for mankind, some points under that. How careful management is necessary, some points under that. And then you go to what India is doing with regards to deep ocean mission. In her answer, as you can see, she has written an introduction and directly gone to main objectives of India's deep ocean mission. That's where I think I have not given her enough marks, 4 or 4.5 or something like that. I've given out of 15. All right. So it's 10, so probably 3.5. So please understand, there might be an implicit statement, sentence, and you have to address that also. And after that, you speak about the real question, which in this case is deep ocean mission. Let's come to ethics. Now, this is a 10 marker. Evaluate the role of sports in inculcating ethical values. Fabi has written a really good answer with regards to how sports is inculcating very important positive values in people who are involved in sports. She has written answer, building trust, discipline, etc., etc. Now, see, something that I feel she could have added more. The word is evaluate. So you can also write in the second page of your answer the problems associated with sports. When I say the problems associated with sports, see, this is something that she wrote during the feedback. Negatives. Sports can lead to unhealthy competition. There can be problems like doping, match fixing. Now, please understand, this part of the answer should not be a lion's share of the answer. The lion's share of the answer should always be the positive aspect of sports in inculcating values. But this can be second page, 20 or 25% of your answer. And after that, you can conclude with a positive statement, how sports in a proper manner, in a rational manner, in an ethical manner should be used to inculcate good values that is going to lead to more solidarity in the society. Something like that, a positive conclusion. But before that, you can still speak about how sports is not always going to inculcate positive values. There are some times where sports can also lead to some negative values being developed. All right. Now, next, I'll again go to an ethics question. Educational institutions often cultivate the belief that success depends only on will and hard work. In this context, discuss the ethical dimensions behind the concept of meritocracy. Now, what Fabi has done is she has focused on a lot of theoretical aspects of meritocracy. This is something that I've seen with many people who write the GS answer for the first time. All right, we have this feeling that GS4 ethics paper is completely different from the rest of GS1, GS2, GS3. Please understand, yes, you have to study something different, but the approach still should be similar. What she has done, we have asked, discuss the ethical dimension. She has given us a very theoretical answer. She has spoken about, please look at the screen, ethical dimensions behind meritocracy, philosopher king, concept by Plato, ruler should be well aware, knowledgeable, ethical, meritocracy promotes these virtues. Then she goes to hard work, and she goes to removes collusion, things like that. But please understand, theory in ethics is necessary, it is important, but end of the day, it is a general studies paper. So some points about how meritocracy is important, look at it, very generic points: reduces nepotism, encourages human capital, better rationality. And similarly, some part of the answer should focus on issues with meritocracy. Negatives, not democratic in nature. Sometimes it creates a very rigid structure. All right, sometimes when you focus a lot on meritocracy, the historical socioeconomic deprivation is not tackled. Things like that will make the examiner understand that it is not just the theory that you have understood, but you know how to make use of the theory in a real life situation. All right. Now I'll call upon Fabi to show us some of her good answers that she had written towards the latter part of our test series, and also give us insights regarding the transformation she brought about in her answer writing style, which eventually helped her get 447 in the 4 GS papers.
So as Nitin sir has mentioned, I had faced a lot of issues while I was writing the answers initially. So one of the major issues was that I was not addressing the rhetorical part of the question. Second was that I was not giving ample emphasis to every part of the question as was needed. Third was that I was not clearly, aware about what was the keyword and what it demands. And fourth was that I did not bring in a lot of specificity to my answers. So the following answers are from a lot of different tests, particularly my comprehensive test, and I'll be showing you like what were the changes that I brought about. So in this particular question, it is about even though Indian freedom movement was firmly fixed on the Gandhian principles of truth and non-violence, Subhash Chandra Bose had a different approach to it. So this is a discuss question. So basically the question is demanding how Gandhian principles of truth and non-violence was applicable to India's freedom movement, and what was a different approach that Subhash Chandra Bose had brought about. So here, if you can see in this particular question, here I've given the title, Indian Freedom Movement, Gandhian Principles. So here I've given the subheading, I have extracted the subheading from the question itself. So the Gandhian principle of ahimsa, sarva-dharma samabhava, non-cooperation, then vandalism. So these are the three Gandhian principles that I've mentioned about. But I think the value addition that I was able to bring was that I did not just write this, that the ahimsa was a part of Gandhian principle. I had brought about how, I had written how it was involved, it was included in the India's freedom movement. So here I've given prayer and fasting against Rowlatt Act. So this was ahimsa, and I connected it back to the question of how that Gandhian principle was used in the Indian freedom movement. Similarly, the non-cooperation and vandalism, where in the Kheda Satyagraha, tax revolt was a thing that we did rather than vandalism. And in the next part, I wrote about what was the approach of Subhash Chandra Bose. So he was having extensive military discipline, use of violence if need be, and I have given the specific examples of where Bose's emphasis on violence or his rejection of complete non-violence can be seen, use of every opportunity. So this was basically what Subhash Chandra Bose was, up for. And ultimately, I ended the question with the conclusion that although Gandhi and Bose had different approaches. Both of them had contributed immensely to India's freedom movement. So I was able to bring in a more like a syncretism of both of them in the conclusion. So both of them cooperated in the NCM, CDM, had respect for each other, and both wanted to fight the British. So I think this was also a good conclusion in this particular question. So in the next question, the question here is, across the world, modernity is associated with disassociation of religion from society, but India has been a unique example of coexistence of multi-religious society along with modern values. In the light of the statement, evaluate the impact of religion as an institution in the Indian society. So here there are some 3 or 4 parts. So you have to address the rhetorical statement that why is the modernity associated with disassociation of religion from society, and how India is an example of coexistence of various religions. And you also have to evaluate the impact. So here evaluate means you have to give the positive as well as the negative impacts. So basically the functional as well as dysfunctional impacts that religion has on Indian society. So here we can see that I've addressed the first part of the question. Modernity is associated with disassociation of religion from society. So scholars like Max Weber said that when there is an onward movement of science, there is going to be a retreat of religion. So I have given address to the first part of the question. Then you have to know about how there is going to be a multi-religious. You have to write about how there is a multi-religious society in India. So here I've given the transition of India, or how the historical part of India's religion, that from 5th century there is Hinduism, in 14th century there was Islam, 18th century there was influx of Christianity, and in the 21st century there are numerous religions. So I have given address to the part that India is a multi-religious society along with modern values. So here in the along with modern values part, there is no better example than our constitution itself. So however, Indian constitution is an epitome of modern values of equality, Article 14, Article 19 and fraternity. So this was the address of the first rhetorical statement. Then you have to write the evaluate part. So here as we move down, we will be able to see that I have written the functional impacts. What all functional impacts, like it acts like a unifying force, collectivism, all those things. And I've also given the dysfunctional impacts of religion. So here again the issue comes about how we have to conclude this particular kind of answer. So here I've given a very neutral conclusion about the amalgamation of different religions. So here the conclusion is that religion as an agency can be a form of stratification. However, India has a typical example of religious syncretism. I've given 2 examples, one of Sufi shrines which are visited by Hindus, and also of 𝗵𝗲𝗃𝗃 cave, which is partly Christian and partly Hindu. And I have also given a very positive note about India's religious syncretism. So this was the answer. So here we can see a change from the first answers where I did not adequately address the evaluate part. I was able to address all the parts of the question and also give justice to the keyword that was mentioned in the question. Okay, so this is a question from governance. So Mission Karma Yogi is a new approach to public service which focuses on individual as a key of transformation. Discuss the key objectives and potential impact of Mission Karma Yogi. So here I consider this to be a good answer because I was able to bring in a figure from the government document of Mission Karma Yogi itself. So here it talks about how individual is the key to transformation. So here in the document itself, it was mentioned that there is PM's vision of an individual being or individual having all these different qualities of being efficient and enabling, creative and constructive, innovative and imaginative. So all these things, and this figure was there in the government document itself. So because I had given a look into that document, I was able to bring it here, and it correctly fit into the rhetorical statement in this particular question. And then it is about discuss the key objectives and potential impacts. So here I have discussed the objectives of Mission Karma Yogi itself. Then we have talked about, I have also talked about the impacts. So here we can see that the impact, I did not just mention its impact on civil servants or on a unidimensional note. I have bifurcated it, and I have also mentioned about its impacts on civil servants, on citizens, and also on government. So here we are bringing multidimensionality, which apparently is what UPSC demands. And also here we can also see that the presentation of the answer is also different. It's not always points, it is also about figures. So here I've given all the points but in a figure form. So that is also there. And finally, the conclusion, Mission Karma Yogi furthers civil service motto Yoga Karmasu Kausalam, that is there in the document itself. So here I was able to bring in different features from the documents and different features of a good answer. So this is an ethics question. So in ethics, usually they there is a a form of question in which they give a statement which is given by some famous people, and we have to write about what we feel when we read this particular statement. So here, peace and justice are two sides of the same coin. So there would be a tendency for people to write only the positive aspects, or how this is absolutely true, how peace and justice are always two sides of the same coin. But here, the difference that I was able to bring in is when I wrote also about the flip side, that peace and justice does not always, peace doesn't always ensure justice and vice versa. So here I've written about how many peaceful countries across the world lack social justice norms, how social and economically just countries lack peace due to terrorism, etc. So I was also able to bring in the opposite side in this question so that it feels more wholesome. So in this is an economy question, if I remember correctly. So here it talks about discuss the potential of organic farming as a suitable and resilient agricultural practice in India. So here the thing is, you just have to discuss about or how it is sustainable and how it is resilient. But there is an implicit part of the question that a lot of people miss, that the current farming, what are the problems of the current farming system which pushes you into organic farming. So here in the first part, in the initial part, I have discussed about the issues in the current farming technique for just 3 points. And I've also discussed what organic farming is. So in the first page, I've addressed the implicit part of the question. And then in the second page, I've talked about how it is sustainable and what are the issues. So completely, I was not able to give a solutions part also. But then in the conclusion, I just one statement that India needs to ensure that organic farming doesn't cause agricultural loss in India, for India to have a march to future by going back to basics. So this is actually a statement which is given by PM Modi itself. So here, although it is not a wholesome conclusion, I was also I did not end the question with just issues. So there does not seem to be an abrupt end to this particular question. And the final question that we're going to discuss would be, though violence due to left-wing extremism has rapidly declined, the ideology is shifting its influence from tribal to urban areas. Analyze the reasons and give solutions. So here, this is a left-wing extremism question, and if you remember in the current mains itself, there was a question about left-wing extremism. So here in the first part, we have to talk about how left-wing extremism has rapidly declined. So there is potential here to draw a map. So in the initial part, as Nitin sir has said, in one of the questions, although there was a scope for drawing a map, I did not do it. But then in this particular question, I drew a map about how left-wing extremism has declined. So there was again a document by the Ministry of Home Affairs which talks about how left-wing extremism currently, in the 2018 report, there is only left-wing extremism currently in 4 states. So here I've drawn the map and I've also marked which all are the states in which left-wing extremism exists now. And here the map is not, it does not seem like India, but then that is not the whole point. So here all you have to do is that you have to give like value addition, that okay, you know that these are the states in which left-wing extremism is there. So that is the whole point of this particular map. Then I've also addressed what left-wing extremism is or what it entails. And then I went on to discuss about urban areas and how urban Naxals are an issue in India. The reasons for this particular shift also I've discussed. And finally, I've also given solutions to this particular question. So, and the conclusion, India can tackle this menace efficiently. So that is a very neutral conclusion also that I've given in this particular question.
Thank you, Fabi, for going through your answers and explaining the nuances of a good GS answer. I'd like to conclude this session by assuring all those who are preparing to write the 2024 mains that with smart work, good guidance, and consistent answer writing practice, all of you can score as high as Fabi and probably even cross 450. Best of luck.